Hey, what's up, nerds? We are back for another little bit of Radio Free Hammer Hall this evening. It's a little bit of an after dark edition. Little quiet, little subdued. Had to wake Des up from a nap to get things started. So we're gonna do a kind of a wrap up of Boyz GT that happened. It's a couple of weeks ago now. We just haven't had a chance to do a show yet about it. So we're going to kind of go over the tournament itself, our lists that we brought, and then, kind of go like round by round how things went. And then at the end, a little bit of discussion about, what we might do differently next time, changes to lists going forward. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. It was a really great tournament, really well run. I believe we had 57 people. So that if you don't count Nova as being in the Northeast, this was definitely the biggest Age of Sigmar GT ever in the Northeast. If you count Nova, I don't know if Nova sneaks in on a technicality or not. But yeah, very well attended at 57. Interesting format to the event as well. Each round was rather than just having a major, minor victory or draw scoring. Each mission had like a sliding scale of like how much you won by. So based on like your victory points for the mission. So it basically you could get up to 15 points for the actual mission itself, and then an additional 5 points from secondary objectives, which usually one or two, at least, of those secondary objectives are just killing certain numbers of points of your opponent's troops.
Yep.
So that was definitely a thing in there. So the format of the tournament, it was kind of funny when Rob on the Honest Wargamer was talking about Boyz, and he had the results, like the day after it happened, but he's like, we don't have all of the actual win-losses in the spreadsheet yet because it's complicated. And yeah, it's complicated because you could lose a game and end up with more tournament points for that round than somebody that won. So it was just weird. Like if somebody had like the lowest possible tier of victory and got none of their objectives, and you got the highest possible tier of loss and got all your secondaries, I think you would have actually come away with more points. So it wasn't recorded as just like straight wins, losses. It was how many points did you get each round? So it skewed heavily towards not just winning a mission, but really dominating it. And because a lot of the secondary objectives were around killing your opponent's army, I mean, it really skewed a lot towards killing as well. So I thought it's an interesting format. I know there is not a lot of other tournaments that do it that way. I personally like it a lot. I wish everybody would do it that way in one way or another. I like the idea of you getting like more points if you had a bigger win in the scenario. Although, I mean, when we get into the individual rounds, one of my matches, like the score did not at all represent how tight the game actually was. So maybe there needs to be some sort of refinement to it. But yeah, so that's just kind of like the general overview. So Des, this was like your first GT experience in AOS now, right?
Yeah, it was great. I had a great time. It was really fun to see all the different armies that people brought. To meet a bunch of people that you like, if you're following who's who and who's doing what where, it's fun to meet like all those people, like run into them, and
Yep,
it was cool. Everybody was really cool. I didn't have anybody that I felt like maybe I should force choke them a little bit. Nobody I wanted to force choke. It was cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was genuinely like that's another thing that I definitely want to say for this event overall is the community itself is just incredibly positive.
Yep.
And it was a very competitive event. Like there were a lot of really, really rough lists and very good players that were there. And everybody was super nice. Everybody got along. I didn't hear of any problems that occurred like the whole weekend. Like it was just like smooth sailing right through. Like everybody that went had a good time. There was a parallel 40K GT that
I think it looked like it was the same sort of vibe though.
What's that?
I said I'm not sure if I felt the same vibe coming from those tables, but what do I know?
I didn't spend that much time over there, but I was good. The point I was going to make was the AOS GT was, I mean, compared to things in the past, it was very close in size to the 40K GT.
Yeah.
So that was very cool. And I mean, last year was, I want to say 22 players, and this year was like more than double last year. So
triple.
Yeah, almost triple. Yeah. So it was a really great event. So Des, you want to talk about the list that you brought with you?
Yeah, I got it right here. I of course put it in my phone. I have a tournament tomorrow, so I put it in my tournament prep pile. I brought Stormcasts from the Realm of Gur, and I brought a real, like, I don't know. I guess I thought about this list a lot and thought of some fun janky tricks. So it's kind of it's based a lot on nuking units off the board and crazy movement shenanigans. And it's just a bunch of weird stuff that nobody would really expect to see on the tabletop. Right. I think, anyway. I took a Lord Aquiller and I took them as the Anvils of Heldenhammer. So I took a Lord Aquiller, I gave him the command trait Deathly Aura, because I had to. He's my general. Gave him the Griff Feather Charm, which I don't think my general has died yet, he said, right the day before he goes to a tournament. And for the mount trait, Ethereal Stalker, give him a little more speed. I took two Knight Vexillors, and I gave them both Pennant of the Stormbringer. So that way I can, again, use movement shenanigans to put units where I needed them. Then I brought the Soulstrike Brotherhood as my battalion. And in that battalion, I took a unit of 18 Castigators, a unit of 3 Castigators, 10 Evocators with 3 Grandstaffs and Celestial Blades. And then another reason I took the Lord Aquiller was I took 3 units of 5 Vanguard Hunters, and they counted as my battle line. And the last thing I took was my Celestar Ballista. The list is crazy. It can move all over the place. With the Lord Aquiller's command ability, he can grab a unit of hunters and pop up somewhere on a board edge. I was grabbing objectives that way. Like I said, the Knight Vexillor, I could with the Soulstrike Brotherhood, I was dropping down the unit of 18 Castigators, nuking whatever I pointed them at off the board, and then I would use the Pennant to either move them again, or I would use the Vexillor to in the next turn use their Anvils of Heldenhammer ability to shoot again. And I would always drop the Vexillor with the Evocators and with the Castigators to give them that ability to either attack again or shoot again.
Yeah. And that battalion also gave you double shots with your castigators on turn 1, correct?
Right. The first turn they came out of the board, as long as there was some Vanguard Hunters on the board. Right. So they would come down, depending on the target. They would be doing 36 shots, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s. More than likely, I'd turn on the -2 rend, and it would just obliterate whatever I pointed them at was dead.
Yep. Yeah, so you went like hard into the shooting isn't dead theory.
I did. That's exactly what I was doing. Castigators suck. Shooting is dead. Hopefully, I think to my all my opponents so far, they've realized that shooting is not dead and castigators do not suck.
Yeah. I definitely need to do a Math Hammer up video on it soon, but I mean, just like the napkin math, like for like lining them up against Judicators on points, the only advantage you have with taking Judicators, I think, is that they can be battle line.
Yep.
Otherwise, like castigators all day.
And they're flexible too, because they could, I mean, against anything, they could just turn on the -2. But if I'm, you know, up against Night Haunt or any demon units, I would get exploding 3s. So it'd be D3 hits on 6s. And that was just, I was taking out full units of 30 bloodletters.
Yeah.
Just gone. Multiple times I did that because I think I faced at least 2 Blades of Corn armies.
Nice. Yeah, so that's something else to mention about the metagame of this particular tournament was basically like a fifth of the armies were Stormcast, a fifth of the armies were Death, a fifth of the armies were Corn, and then it was just like a mix of everything else.
Yep. Wow.
There was an outrageous amount. Like Corn was the #1 allegiance. I think there were 13 Corn lists.
I know it's crazy.
Including like multiple Council of Blood lists.
Yeah. There's 3 or 4 of them, right? Or more.
There were at least 2 that I saw. And I believe one of them won.
One of them did win.
And it was the one with that also had the Exalted Greater Demon of Corn.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, my list, I was running Nurgle, running a Blight Cyst list, Great Unclean one with Grandfather's Blessing and Tome of 1,000 Poxes, so that I had extra insurance on my spell casting and more control of the cycle of corruption. I ran a unit of 10 Blight Kings and 2 units of 5 Blight Kings for the Blight Cyst. So that gave them all Rend 1 in addition to their insane number of attacks. And they also ignore cover, but that actually did not come up once in this tournament. It doesn't come up often. The fun thing, though, is that comes up when you play against Deepkin, because their first turn tide is it's covered everything.
Yep.
It's not that it gives it +1 save.
Yep.
It's everything's cover. Oh wait, no, Blight just ignores that. So I ran a Harbinger of Decay with the Ether Quartz Brooch, which is the Realm of Light artifact that gives you back your command point on a 5-up whenever you spend one.
How did you figure, just in your off the top of your head, how do you feel that worked?
Well, I was going to mention this at the end, but I am never running that again. It was just I have such a different outlook on Nurgle now after this event, and like what I want to do with it, and like what works, what doesn't work. The things that I found myself doing over and over again, like it made me realize that I'm playing Nurgle all wrong, even though I felt like I did pretty well with it. So anywho, continuing on the list, I brought a unit of 30 Plague Bearers, which then makes your Lord of Blights not attacks. Because the Lord of Blights command ability basically does like doubles up the hit debuffs on the Plague Bearers when they're 20 or more models. So they're -2 to hit in close combat and -4 to hit in shooting. So they are really, really like super defensive. It's very hard for your opponent to move your Plague Bearers when they have the Lord of Blights command ability on them. And a lot of people a lot of people have a criticism of the Blightsist battalion because it makes you run the Lord of Blights, and he's usually just attacks and he sucks and all of that. But if you run a unit of 30 Plague Bearers with him, he suddenly becomes like an MVP.
Yeah. I can agree with that, having faced it. It's true.
Yeah. So I ran Gutrot Spume to be able to bring my unit of 10 Blight Kings in on a board edge at the end of my first movement phase. And then, what else was in the list? I think that might be it. I ran a Prismatic Palisade to for a variety of reasons, to disrupt enemy movement, to stop shooting, which I knew that I was going to run into somebody else that had the same idea that you did, that shooting's not dead.
Well, actually, there was another Stormcast player with a shooting list. Anyway.
Yes. And I played against him.
Yeah, that's what I was like.
I also played against a mixed order list that had a lot of shooting in it. In neither case did the Prismatic Palisade do anything. So yeah, that's basically the list. I feel like I'm missing something out of that. Gutrot, Lord of Blights, Great Unclean One, Harbinger of Decay, 20 Blight Kings, 30 Plague Bearers. No, that's it. And then I brought a whole bunch of extra stuff with me to summon. I literally had all of the different options for summoning except a second Great Unclean One. So yeah, that was the basic idea. The Plague Bearers, their role was generally to hold objectives, and if I was up against an Alpha Strike list, to kind of like Alpha block against them and try to stave off their attack as long as possible. Gutrot Spume comes in off the board edge with his 10 Blight Kings. They get +1 to charge, just inherently on the Blight Kings. So they make that 8-inch. You have the 9-inch charge becomes going off on an 8, which is much more likely. And then you have an extra command point in the list from the battalion to usually be able to re-roll that when you fail. So you actually get it like a lot of the time. And that ends up just being like this huge bully unit that your opponent is forced to deal with. Meanwhile, you use your other Blight Kings as kind of a hammer, and your Plague Bearers sit on objectives, and you summon stuff, and the Great Unclean One does his thing, and that's about it. It's a relatively simple list. It's pretty straightforward. It is very flexible because of because of the cycle of contagion, because of like the different kinds of options that you end up getting. With like the Great Unclean One can cast 2 spells a turn, and he's got 4 spells or 5 spells he can cast, plus the Prismatic Palisade. So he's got a lot of different options. I also the spell that I gave him out of the Nurgle spell lore was Favored Poxes, which is the one that gives a unit -1 to hit, wound, and save. Which I think I only actually got off like once.
I was wondering how that worked out. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, I think, a result of how I was playing it. And how my opponents were responding to my list. So it was a weird combination of things. Trying to think if I really like missed anything here in my list. Great Unclean one was Bile Blade and Doomsday Bell, so he was like the buff wagon build. Knowing like the Harbinger of Decay and the Lord of Blights, I was going to frequently want to use both of those command abilities in one turn. And I'm also going to want to have that extra command point at the beginning of the game to reroll a charge on the Blight Kings coming in with Gutrot Spume.
Yep.
So that's what led me to the Ether Quartz Brooch, because I was like, oh, this list is really hungry for command points. Maybe I can grab a couple more with this. And I think I got like 2 or 3 like the whole tournament. For a variety of reasons.
Did you find yourself starved for command points?
Yup, all the time.
I found that even though I sort of geared up to have more, I never really found myself in a position where I was like, damn, if I only had one more command point. I don't think I ever found myself in that position. I don't remember, but I'm fairly certain I don't think I was ever like, shit, one command point away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing, too, is like you can use the Great Unclean One's command ability on the unit of Plague Bearers and suddenly make them an offensive unit as well if you need to.
Yep.
I mean, they're still not a good offensive unit.
No.
It makes them more offensive than they would otherwise be. So, yeah. That was basically it. So, I knew my bad matchups going in were basically going to be like, I knew Death was bad. I knew Daughters of Cain was bad.
I knew my bad matchups too.
Yeah. I mean, they're like everybody's bad matchups right now, but I mean, they're just especially bad for me. Yep. Like, Death out-magics me, and that's a problem. Not a lot of other armies are going to out-magic a Great Unclean One with a Tome of 1,000 Boxes. But, yeah, like Tzeentch is a problem in that same way, but Tzeentch is really not that good right now, so I'm not that worried about it. But Death, like, I just have a major problem eating through their stuff. Same thing with Daughters of Cain. I was feeling really good about the amount of corn and the amount of Stormcast that were there. I know that in like the Northeast meta, like there's just tons and tons and tons of Stormcast players. Yeah. So there were actually less Stormcast players than I even anticipated, even though they were about a fifth of the field. But Blight Cyst in general is just like a can opener for Stormcast. It's also really good against Khorne because Khorne either has weak saves on their demons or like the good saves on their mortal guys. You at least can take those down, and then you have protection against all of the mortal wounds that they can put out. So like that felt like a pretty good matchup. So I was pretty happy with that general concept. So I kind of knew I had some strengths and weaknesses going in. But yeah, of course, round 1, I get paired up with one of my worst matchups. So play against a Death Army round 1.
Mm-hmm.
And you also had one of your worst nightmares for round 1, right?
Yeah. awesome player. Ben Moley's like, I've been watching him on like, you know, Bella Lost Souls and LVO, and like he just smashes people at 40K. And he was playing Sylvaneth. And when I saw the list and like what people were playing, I was like, oh man, I don't want to play you know, Ben Moley in that Sylvaneth list. And not that he is a bad dude, but I just know I'm gonna get, you know, it's gonna be a bad day for me. And I don't want to play that 200 Plague Monk list either. Even, you know, even though I love that they're Skaven. But anyway, my first matchup was Ben Moley and his Sylvaneth. And it just like right off the bat was bad. It was the mission was
total commitment.
Total commitment. So nobody was popping out of the air. So, you know, I just deploy my stuff, and without going into too much detail, I move my evocators up and I move all my stuff up and around and do my stuff. And then he throws some Sylvaneth trees right in front of my evocators and just starts casting spells like crazy and rolling like dude should have been at Vegas. Just started rolling hot. By the end of his hero phase, due to the Sylvaneth rules, forest rules, I had lost over half my evocators.
Wow.
Yep, that was like, oh god. 2 rounds of shooting against Alariel, did a total of 5 wounds, which she just healed back. And I was like, this is how this is going to go. This is how it was just, for me, it was just downhill. I just felt like I boosted over the hill and I put the brakes on and they were gone. And then I went for the emergency brake and that snapped off. And I was just...
Yeah, like the wildwoods block your line of sight on all of your shooting too. So like,
yep,
like he was kind of nerfing you everywhere.
He was. So he's throwing down Sylvaneth everywhere, and he was playing multiple battalions. And I think one of them was like Hearthguard or Hearthhome. But anyway, he was just summoning. So it got to the point where he's like, oh, I just can't summon any more woods. There's no room for me to put them down. And he just
did he run out of dryads too?
Like crazy amounts of dryads, and he ended up running out of dryads. And that is, and one of my bad decisions was I chose to try and dispel him summoning dryads. And I don't know why the hell I did that, because I kept thinking like I got to worry about summoning, but I got to worry about the Sylvaneth Wildwoods. And it just came up, and I was like, I'll dispel that. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? I got to save that for the Sylvaneth Wildwoods. And then the Sylvaneth Wildwoods came out, and that was it. Just nuke, nuke, nuke.
Yep.
Yep, just waiting for me to spell that. So, and I'd say that's one of my, like, I mean, it's built that way. It's just kind of a skew list, but that's one of the weaknesses is I don't have a lot of anti-magic. So when I came up against a Sylvaneth list that's, you know, everything's revolving around casting, I don't know how many spells a turn. It was insane the amount of casting he was doing. One of the battalions he took gives like each of his casters +1 spell. So he was just casting and casting and casting and casting.
Yep.
Evocators were dying and dying and dying. Yeah, so it went downhill really fast for me. I was overwhelmed with Sylvaneth Wildwoods. My evocators were gone by round 2. I was trying to hold the middle with castigators, and hunters don't do anything besides, you know, try and take up spaces. So it went downhill very, very fast for me. So that was a bad matchup for me, round 1.
Yeah.
How did yours go?
Pretty much just as bad.
With really good guy.
Yeah. I had the same experience where I had, like, you know, it was a bad matchup, really cool opponent whose name I'm totally forgetting. And I apologize to all of my opponents. I do not remember anybody's name. I am terrible with names. But it really good dude that I was playing round 1. He was running a death list. I forget which legion he was running. not sure it really mattered that much. It basically, in a nutshell, he was running like 2 blocks of 40 skeletons and a unit of like a max size unit of Grimgas Reapers. And then, a bunch of heroes that were buffing everything. And I think it was Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. That was in there as well. And it just sucked. I tried to basically tried to be the hammer, and tried to really like force the offense. And I believe I got across the table turn 1. I basically like threw, I think, like my Lord of Blights and a unit in the unit of Plague Bearers on one flank. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just defend this objective to the end. He's not going to be able to deal with all of this efficiently. And I'm just going to put pressure on the other side of the board, and hopefully I'll be able to just beat through it. Mm-hmm. I did not. It was pretty bad. My Blight Kings were just getting torn up by skeletons. Yes. And then any skeletons that I killed, he just got back with his graveyards the next turn. So it was really bad. I think I basically got like nearly tabled, and I don't think I killed any of his units. It was a rough game. Like that matchup for me in general is really rough.
Even more.
Yeah, it's just like I don't have a very good way of dealing with a horde army. And that's what Death does very, very well. Like that's one of the things that I've really noticed with Nurgle is that you don't have stuff that deals with hordes very effectively in your very low model count. So when they start chipping away at you, like you're going down significant percentages each time you lose a model in power.
Well, at least you have the ability to summon more back.
Yeah. And I was summoning more Plague Bearers onto the field to try and crowd out the graveyards and try and stop things from happening as much as possible, try and get in his way. But I mean, like the Grimgas Reapers being able to fly is just, they just go around anything you do. They go over everything you do. So, and I just didn't have enough bodies to deal with it all. So he sent his Grimgas Reapers after my Plague Bearers. And they, like, even though they were like buffed up with the Lord of Blights, it was so many attacks that it just took them down.
That range is the 2-inch reach.
Yeah, the 2-inch reach is brutal. Yeah, so that's basically how that went. That's
yeah, both our round 1 games were
to the losers bracket.
Yep, went right into the losers bracket. Rerolling ones, Jack. I was playing a crazy Stormcast list, and Paul was playing Magakin of Nurgle.
Yep, with a Blights list. So yeah, round 2 was Scorched Earth, which is one of my favorite scenarios.
Yep.
So what was your matchup like there?
Mirror match against another Stormcast army. It was I think I have this list here. It was Philip Almendinger. He's playing Stormcast. He had like a unit of 20 Sequitors, 2 units of 10 Evocators, 2 units of filthy, scummy ass skinks. Skinks. Couple units of Judicators, Castellan, and I can't think of what his name is. The new dude on a Griff Charger that comes in the Soul War starter set. Yep, that dude.
Yeah, that guy.
I think that was the basics of his list. I shocked the hell out of him with my list when I dropped down the Castigators. I got first turn, I dropped down the Castigators, and I just nuked his Secretors right off the board. Then I think I failed the charge on the Evocators, which it's just going to happen sometimes. But they're enough for a break they can take it, but they are across from both his units of Evocators.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Actually, you know what? I think I did get the charge off. And I managed to murder down one unit. Yeah, I got the charge. I murdered down one unit, but the other unit like got countercharged me later and did the damage because the other unit did the damage back. So I was like, at the end of the day, after I cleaned up that area, there was 5 Evocators left, and none of them were mine. I did like movement shenanigans all over the board that he was just wigging out about, which is fun because that's the fun part for me. I tell people before the game start what's going to happen, and then all of a sudden my dudes are popping up like whack-a-moles everywhere, and they're like, "Well, how did you get that? How did you get over there?" The crucial part of the game, and which is why I curse Skinks forever, even though it's totally my fault, is I had managed to charge in my upper right-hand corner to get onto his objective. I was right there, and I had him outnumbered. I could have just burnt it after I nuked some Skinks. But I also had the Evocators in my left corner going towards my objective, and I hemmed and hawed and thought things out. And I was like, I don't want to die to the Evocators and have them grab my objective. One crucial thing that I had forgotten about in that second was that Skinks can just eject themselves out of combat when it's their turn to go. So I royally messed up there. I still ended up winning the game by 1 point, but if I had, it was just a couple little things. If I remembered that, it would have been game over in a big way because I got the objective on his other side too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was the huge mess up in the game that could have got me like a major victory over a 1 point victory.
Yep.
It was cool. He was really cool to play against. He's like, I'm not really, a tournament player. He has a pretty good tournament list, but he said, I'm not a tournament player. I'm a casual dude. It was fun. We just hung out and played, and it was great.
Yeah. So my second round, I played against a mixed order list that was basically like a heavy shooting mixed order list. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of heavy on free guild stuff. He had like his battle line was handgunners. He would like 3 units of handgunners. Mm-hmm. We had a steam tank, 2 rocket batteries, a cannon, a Lord Ordinator, a unit of pistoliers, and I'm trying to remember what else was in there. Tenebral Shard with the Sword of Judgment. I'm trying to remember what else was in there. I feel like there was something else big in there, but I'm not remembering. Like physically large.
How do you remember as you're going through it?
So he wasn't a very experienced player. He was actually the brother of the guy that I played round 1, which was kind of funny. Really cool guy, but he was just not. He just wasn't an experienced AOS player. I think it may have been like his first tournament. And he had like never played against Nurgle before, so he did not know what he was in for. Even though like I explained to him what all of my stuff did, like, I'm putting Gut Rot Spume off the board with a unit of 10 Blight Kings. This is how they come on and when, and blah, blah, blah. So he kind of did like a lopsided deployment and deployed kind of like to one side of the board, which left, and he deployed in such a way that he left his flank open. And
you did.
He, in that flank being open, just left open his 2 rocket batteries. So I was able to just like drop in Gut Rot Spume first turn with the Blight Kings, get the charge off, and just like start ripping through his war machines immediately. And like his handgunners, and it was basically like the entire game was basically just that one unit of Blight Kings slowly chewing through his whole army. Eventually the other Blight Kings all showed up for the party.
But turn out the lights anyway.
Yeah, like as soon as I outnumbered him on the first objective that I was on, I blew it up. And then I just kind of kept moving till I got to the other one. Like, just kind of kept like it was actually mostly like pile-in moves more than like charges that were slowly getting me there, because he kept charging me. He kept throwing his stuff. Kept throwing his stuff at me. But he never like even like crossed into my territory. He did not challenge my objectives at all. A funny little story from this game was like even his Tenebral Shard failed him. So he did like the teleport thing with the Tenebral Shard and went after Gut Rot Spume and duffed the rolls, and Gut Rot Spume survived.
Turned off judgment.
And then after surviving it, Gut Rot Spume for the rest of the game got off his ability each round of combat after the first one that shuts off like one of your like one model's stat lines. So I'm just like, okay, your Tenebral Shard can't do anything this turn. Like every turn until Gut Rot eventually just ground it out. So Tenebral Shard with Sword of Judgment loses to Gut Rot Spume because of lucky dice rolls.
Yeah.
And that was basically just indicative of how that game just kind of went. I think I ended up actually tabling him completely. So it was a big win for me. I got, like full points on it. I got like all of the secondaries. I got the maximum, like full 15 points. So it was a really good big win. Did I feel really good about myself because of it? I mean, I was beating up on a new player, so yeah. I mean, I wasn't gonna. I mean, it was a GT, so I wasn't really gonna take my foot off the gas entirely. But I mean, I wasn't just being a jerk either, So that was basically how that went. I'm trying to think if there was anything else from that game. One thing I can definitely say is he had a really, really nicely painted army.
Yes,
he had a really great paint job on his army. All of his like handgunners were converted to look like, I want to say like Napoleonic war, like Napoleonic Wars. Riflemen,
yep,
like with the backpacks and everything. So that was very, like, I thought it was really cool.
Frigate? Was that the other thing he had, a frigate?
Yeah, he had an Arcanaut frigate. That was the other big thing he had. Yeah. So then round 3. This was a great one. So the mission was focal points.
Yep.
So it's a diagonal deployment mission. So how did your game go?
So there's two armies that I specifically picked out and said, man, I hope I don't face those. And so there I was at round 3 facing the other army I didn't want to play against. It was 200 Plague Monks. It was Hui from Huicon Gaming. That dude is awesome. I had a great time playing against him. Everybody was so like fun to play against. But I'm trying to recall specifics now. But it was
like, actually 200 Plague Monks is,
it's
all you really need to know about how that game's gonna go.
Well, the shocking part was I was doing really, really as well as one could expect on that sort of facing that sort of an uphill battle. And it came down to I think it was around round 4. He'll have a video up on it, but I think round 3. I think I was in position where if I got the priority, I could take like all 4 of the outside objectives and hopefully hop up faster on points, higher on points than he was. Or if I lost the objective, it was going to be not good. But I lost the priority roll, and that was it. And he kind of, at that point was able to run away with a lot of points. But I at that point I was like, I'm kind of screwed. I need to start going for my secondaries at least. So that's what I was doing the best I could on objectives, grabbing all these secondaries. My evocators lived through the whole game and were just like kept running into units and smashing them. It was cool. I mean, it ended up being a fun game. Just that priority roll, I banked everything on it, and it didn't happen.
Yeah. It's interesting. The more I've been playing in 2nd edition now, the more I'm actually kind of scratching my head and saying, maybe this priority roll thing is not like as balanced as it used to be.
You think? You think it's a little too crazy?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not anti-priority roll quite yet, but I'm at least in a place where I'm like questioning where I was feeling about it before. Because that seems like it just happens still too much.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still not too bad. You got to but I think that's part of it is like you have to. I set myself up for full gamble. I'm ready to rock. That's what I did. And if I lost it, I was screwed, and that was it. I was gonna win big, or I was gonna go home, and I went home.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I usually depending on the mission, what we're playing, what's going on, I'll plan for that, double turn against me. In this case, I just went.
So, funny enough, I also played against Skaven 3rd round. And I actually played on the same table 2 rounds in a row. So I already kind of knew what to expect on that table. So it was a very different Skaven list, though. It was a Scryer list that was a unit of clan rats, a couple of different heroes, and 15 storm vermin. I'm going to say that again slowly so everyone can let that sink in for a second. 15 storm vermin.
15. Yep.
5 units of 3 storm vermin.
The long walkers.
That was like
I think everybody was scared of that. Everybody kept walking by that. There's 2 armies that were like that. Everybody's like, oh God. Yeah. Oh God. And I was like, yes, give me that.
Yeah. The good thing was that I knew straight off, based on his list, they had published all the lists ahead of time. So I had noticed this list, and I noticed that he wasn't running anything that let him like deep strike the storm vermin.
Well,
So
one thing on the
like
army
where
build,
they get really crazy powerful and dangerous when they just pop up in front of you and spew mortal wounds on you.
they can still do that with their inherent weaponry. They can take it's not grinder fist, but there's a weapon loadout they can take where one of them can take it that they can like essentially deep strike. It's 9 inches away, but they can still deep strike. Just an FYI, that doesn't show up in Army Builder.
Yeah, it he was not taking that build though.
No, it was not.
So my feculent gnarl maw placement ended up being like on point, good gamble. I put it in the middle of the table. So it basically like there were 2 like big pillars like in the center of the table, and then I stuck the feculent gnarl maw basically between the 2 of them. There's like off to one of the sides to kind of make a wall in front of one of the objectives, and just kind of gambling that I would get the side of the battlefield that I wanted, which I ended up getting. So it worked out. And then, so turn 1, I went first because I outdropped him. I ran stuff into the middle of the board to grab that central objective turn 1. I ran all of my plague bearers into that objective. So, and I believe I burnt a command point to run them on a 6. Like plus the bell. So like I just like got like 30 plague bearers in the middle objective, like blocked off so that he didn't have enough room to get storm fiends on a charge into them. So you would have to go around.
You're calling them storm vermin before.
What's that?
You're calling them storm vermin before, I think, by accident. You noticed in the chat.
By that. Storm fiends. Hey. Yeah. So they just had no room. And I threw my prismatic palisade up like on one of the sides as well to like give him even more that he had to go around, or he had to like waste magic on trying to get rid of the palisade. So that ended up working out. And then I popped up my Blight Kings on the other side of the table. They made their charge into his flank, which like I was able to get it so that like I got all of my Blight Kings in, and he only had 1 unit of Storm Fiends in combat. So like I just nuked a unit of Storm Fiends off the field turn 1. So I like scored 6 points turn 1.
Nice.
And then he wasn't really able to do anything after that. He didn't try and dispel the palisade, so he started trying to go around the palisade.
The long walkers.
Yeah, go take the long way around the palisade. And he started sending more Storm Fiends at the unit of 10 Blight Kings, and I believe they took out at least another unit of 3 Storm Fiends before the unit of Blight Kings went down. So it was just, you know, it was just kind of a grind on that. At some point, I got up to, I was able to sit on my contagion enough, and I rolled well on my feculent gnarl maw rolls for contagion that I got 21 contagion on turn 3, and I used it to pop another unit of 20 plague bearers, and I popped them onto an objective that was unguarded. So that was fun.
So you had lots of experience against those filthy storm fiends.
Yeah. See, you almost called them storm vermin too.
I did.
Yeah. So that was another game that I had like a a big points win. Like it was just a really big win. It was a hard fought game though. Like he really was, like coming around the other side with his Storm Fiends really was putting some serious challenge to like my objectives and what I was holding on to. Those things dump a lot of mortal wounds into things,
Yes,
you know?
Yes, they do.
And he was basically running them in such a way that like he was putting his clan rats as like a shield wall in front of the storm vermin. So like you couldn't just charge the storm vermin. You had to go through the clan rats first, and then you would be in range of the storm vermin shooting you.
Yep.
So like it was a good game plan. I just kind of like that he got kind of screwed on like terrain and the palisade and all of those sorts of things. Like that was like the only time the palisade actually really did something really effective.
Yep.
Because it was also blocking shooting like from the storm vermin. Like they couldn't shoot through it. So yeah. So thus ended day one.
Yeah.
So I was feeling pretty good after day one. Because I was 2-1 and my 2 wins were really big wins. So yeah. I was feeling pretty good going into day 2. How was your feeling after day 1?
Holy shit, how did I get hammered so badly? Yeah, I was like, what the hell? You know, should be playing this poorly. But I was all right. I was just like, I'll just rally tomorrow.
Yep.
I'll rally tomorrow.
Yeah, so it was definitely good. I noticed overnight they posted up the scores and everything online and told everybody, you know, check your scores, blah, blah, blah. I noticed that my score was actually recorded incorrectly and they had me 10 points higher than I actually was. So they did correct it, but they didn't repair people after they corrected the error. So they had done the pairings on Saturday night for Sunday morning. And then they didn't want to redo the pairings like after any changes were made to, you know, when people found that there were mistakes in their scores. So going into round 4, that means I got paired up because I was paired based on an incorrect score. So I was up against somebody that was 3-0. And I was 2-1. And was a very cool British gentleman whose name I'm totally forgetting. He was running Stormcast. And it was a heavy shooting list with 4 ballistas. So that was fun. So what were you up against on round 4?
I was up against where's my opponent? 45 minutes later, I finally got the game going with the
ringer.
A ringer, yeah. Which was like, I mean, I guess it was pretty easy.
Yeah. But like your opponent dropped and
yeah, my opponent dropped in the ringer, and that's who I played, and it was fine. Just played a nice slow game. He was a bit like slow of a player. I could have like really hammered out a lot of points in that game if I had, if we had been able to get the game started on time and like played fast. I would have like skyrocketed up, I think, in the battle points.
Yep. So the mission was Better Part of Valor for those watching, which I think that's one of my favorite missions now. It is just a really well-designed mission.
Yeah.
So this is the game that I was talking about where like the end score did not reflect the closeness of the game at all. So my opponent was running, I forget all of the specifics of his list, but it was 4 ballistas and a Lord Ordinator. He put them all into the Celestial Realm.
Tons of sequitors too.
Yeah, a unit of 20 sequitors, a unit of 5 sequitors, 2 units of 5 evocators, and a unit of 10 liberators. No, the unit of 5 liberators. I'm sorry. So he had kind of spread himself out mainly into the corners and just put 1 unit of liberators in the middle and to hold that middle objective on his side. I did get to go first again. I outdropped my opponent. So I went first. Took my Blight Kings to the side of the board where that was not where the unit of 20 sequitors were. So they failed their charge. However, I took a unit of 5 Blight Kings and said, I'm going for it. And they actually made the trip all the way across the board and completed their charge into the unit of 5 liberators in the middle of the board. And I popped them in 1 round of combat. So that, and I just immediately burned that objective because I knew my Blight Kings were not sticking around for very long. Oh, and the other thing in his list was like 1 random unit of Canary. To grab objectives and stuff. Yep. So what happened from here? He sent his sequitors at my unit of Blight Kings that had taken out his liberators. And then on the other side of the board, he sent his other unit of sequitors after my unit of 10 Blight Kings. And then he dropped down his 4 ballistas right next to my unit of 10 Blight Kings as well. So basically what ended up happening was I chewed through that unit of sequitors pretty quickly. And I don't think he was expecting that level of damage output from the Blight Kings. So I just ate through them really quickly. And then after that, I charged into the unit of evocators that were behind them and also got his ballistas into the combat. So now his ballistas were in the combat. So it basically kind of took them out of the game because now they had to shoot at my Blight Kings. They couldn't shoot at anything else because they were all in combat.
Yep.
And I took out the evocators. I eventually got all of those Blight Kings like just ground down by shooting. But I did manage to eventually burn that objective. After he took care of my unit of Blight Kings that were in the middle of the board, he sent his sequitors across to my center objective where all of my plague bearers were. And he eventually chewed through all of that with like sequitors in a unit of 20 are very strong.
Yeah.
So what the game ended up basically coming down to was on turn 4. I believe I had bottom of turn 4. And I had summoned some plague bearers onto my objective on my right-hand side. I had burned my objective on the other side because I knew it was going to like be lost eventually. So I think I got like 2 points, 4 points out of it, something like that. Mm-hmm. I had burned 2 of his objectives already. He burned my middle objective when he brought his sequitors across. They did more damage more quickly to my plague bearers than I had expected. They also chewed through the Great Unclean One before getting to the plague bearers. So it was all basically up to like what was going on the right flank. Like both of those objectives were still left. I summoned plague bearers onto my objective. I had previously had Blight Kings holding that objective and just kind of hanging out there.
In the fight.
And we were both basically saying, like, thinking through like the same basic sort of idea. So he had started moving the evocators up that he had guarding that objective because he was going to try and make a run at my objective with the evocators. But he failed his charge into my stuff with the evocators. My turn, I moved up. I made the charge. And then it was like, thanks to a high charge roll that I ended up getting, I didn't wipe his unit of evocators, but I was able to get more models than he did into within 6 inches of that objective to blow up that objective. And it was so close on that we were basically both looking at it like, we're not sure if this model is actually within 6 inches or not. So we called a judge over just to have an impartial third party measure it and say whether or not it's in. It ended up being in. I burned the objective. I burned my own objective. So now there were no objectives left on the board. My opponent, who had, I think he had only scored like 1 or 2 victory points from burning objectives. And I had burned like 4 other objectives, including one that I had for that I scored like 8 points on. So like the score did not reflect at all how close the game was. Like he was, if not table me, come very close to tabling me. And it was just a matter of I got lucky on a charge roll being just long enough to get the unit into combat in the right way that when I piled in, I got more models in to hold an objective to raise the objective on his side of the board. And that was it. It was like a lucky die roll that made it happen.
It's the dice
yeah, and it's I was really like surprised at the outcome because that was a terrifying list. I felt like I was on the back foot most of the game. And it was an incredibly tight game that, like, if a couple of dice rolls had gone differently, I would have lost. And this was like the one little like feel bad moment of the tournament because like the score of that round did not reflect how close the game actually was.
Yeah.
I mean, I got like a 20-0 victory on that mission, but like well, it wasn't 20-0. He had got a couple of his secondaries, but like I got like 20 points on that mission. Like it didn't feel like a 20-point victory, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a very, very good game. Really great opponent as well. It was just, you know, I think if either of us had made decisions a little bit differently or rolled dice a little bit differently, the game would have had a completely different outcome. And that's it was a really tight game. I know he won his last round. So he went 4-1. I think he got like 7th, something like that.
Yeah, like 7th place. Yeah, he did well.
Yeah, he did really well. Yeah, really interesting list. Like it's just very interesting list. But yeah, so that was round 4. So going into round 5, I was now 3-1. And all of my wins were huge wins. And I did pick up at least a few points on my loss. So I was in pretty good points shape going into the last round. So the last round was Places of Arcane Power.
Yeah, this was like right off the bat. I played another Blades of Corn list. It was actually one of the coolest themed armies I've ever seen. It's an army I'd always wanted to do. It was themed off of Tuska the Demon Killer, which is out of the Orcs from 40K Codex, and is one of my favorite like little blurb boxes about this Orc war boss who flies into the Eye of Terror looking for better fights and ends up on this planet where, you know, you fight from dusk till dawn, die, and then rise again the next day, and you're just eternally fighting. And his story has gotten bigger from there. It's moved from that little planet Korn noticed, and it was like, I want this dude training my bloodthirsters how to fight. So he brings Tuska and his whole army like to his throne of bronze, like right around the moat outside, and he trains. Basically, he doesn't know he's training the bloodthirsters, but he's fighting bloodthirsters every day, so they get better at fighting against Tuska the Demon Killer. So like as soon as that was one of the first armies I saw when I walked in the door, and I almost cartwheeled like a little girl all the way through when I saw it, because it's just so cool. It's totally converted. It's a Blades of Corn army, but it's all like savage orcs and converted scrap guns. It was just beautiful. I loved it. And the player's name is Adam Fasselt, I think. I'm probably butchering the last name. But man, did I love that army. That is one of my favorite armies I've ever seen. Dude was Adam Fasselt. Dude was you know, an awesome dude. He was totally like, he had a book with him that had all the like narrative details and the like game details with pictures of his models, and some of them illustrated in a book. He had a book of his whole army like that. It was crazy that the amount of love that he put into this army. And I felt bad when things didn't go well for him because of his Places of Arcane Power. He only had 2 models. You know, he's playing Khorne, so he had no wizards, and he only had 2 models with artifacts. I had evocators, which were wizards, and 2 models with artifacts. I ended up getting the first turn, blew like his real hammer unit he was planning on putting up against my evocators, his bloodletters. I nuked them off the board immediately with the castigators, and it was just downhill for him from there.
Yep.
Just kept racking up the points. And it was the last game, and I could tell like he was, you know, tired of getting beat up, and I think he just wanted to call it a day and wrap things up. And that was another like point where I was like, yeah, that's cool. And I thought about afterwards, I was like, man, I should just ask him if he was okay with to keep on playing, or at least like, could we think about where we'd be at the end of round 5? You know, instead we just capped it where we were, points where we're at, and that was it. Because if we had done that, all right, that was another place where I would have spiked right up the battle points.
Right.
But it was fine. I was like honored to play against his army. It was so cool. I don't know, it was the coolest army there to me.
Nice. So I also played against a Blades of Corn list last round. And it was another very cool army. Because it was, I think it's something that, like, more widely, I don't think anybody has really put these pieces together before. I have not heard anybody talk about this before. So it was a Corn army that was using the Beasts of Chaos Corn Battalion that made all of his Beasts of Chaos Corn marked. So he was running 2 units of Gores for battle line, a unit of 40 Marauders for his third battle line, and then 2 units of 30 Bestigor, with 2 Slaughter Priests, a Blood Secretor, a Blood Stoker, and a Bloodthirster. And I forget which Bloodthirster it is. So all of those different things combined come up to, you know, he can take his, like, one of his units of Bestigor. They can run and charge, like, innately on their War Scroll. I believe they get +1 to either their run or their charge. He can whip them with the Bloodstoker. Plus they have a 6-inch move. So they're going, and he wasn't using any command abilities, so he could just change his run rolls to a 6 every time. So his opening move, like every game, would be move up my unit of Bestigor like 14 inches or something like that. And then they would be buffed by the Blood Secretor and Slaughter Priests, which both had Killing Frenzy. So, like, and like with the battalion buffs, he was like there were 4 attacks each, hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, with rerolls on both of them, and rend. Like, they were throwing an absolutely bonkers amount of damage around. And they moved really fast, and they were a shitload of bodies. And they were Corn within range of the Blood Secretor banner, so everybody's immune to Battle Shock. So it didn't matter that it was a huge number of bodies, which, by the way, also have a 4-up save. So that should just give you an idea right off the top of how this game was going to go. Yeah. I love this list. I think there's probably better ways to build the list, but I mean, good on you for figuring this out. Like, because this is, like, I think this is really a thing, and people just haven't, like, caught on to that, like, Corn Beasts of Chaos is
outside your book,
super a thing.
Yep.
So I made the gamble basically and said, I'm just going to go all in and try to just go as like alpha blocky as possible. All he had that could hold objectives were his Blood Secretor and his Bloodthirster, which means he really only had the Bloodthirster that could hold objectives. So my plan was, in what I did, I took my 30 Plague Bearers, I moved them up the board, I'm like made them so that they were like a pocket. I put my Great Unclean One in the pocket, so he was like just at the edge,
just
as
like
far away as possible from the objective, so that he's holding the objective, but he won't get drawn into combat when the Plague Bearers get charged. I created a bubble around him so that the Bloodthirster would have a really hard time like flying over and hitting him from behind.
Yep.
And like I buffed them with the Lord of Blights, so they had, you know, like the -2 to hit in close combat. So like all of those things should have been like totally awesome, right?
Yep.
And then I got off my charge with Gutrot Spume in the Blight Kings into one of his flanks that I was really like, at the end of the day, it was, I threw it at the flank where I sent my Harbinger of Decay, who was my other guy that could hold objectives in that scenario.
Yep.
So I moved up my Harbinger of Decay, kind of did the same thing with Blight Kings to hold that objective, and you know, use the Blight Kings as a barrier to, you know, prevent the onslaught, and then sent the unit of 10 Blight Kings in to Alpha Strike him and try and tie up that flank so that the attack on the Harbinger of Decay would get delayed.
Yep.
So here's what ended up actually happening. He then charges everything in at me. And he his Bestigor nuke my entire unit of 30 plague bearers off the field in one round of combat.
Ain't that something?
Yeah, with -2 to hit.
That's just
There
you go. There you go.
Yeah. So then, you know, thankfully, like, my Great Unclean One was still there. He survived. My Harbinger of Decay didn't get charged yet. I like fluffed all of my rolls on my unit of Blight Kings that came in with Gut Rot, and like they went into a unit of Marauders, and they did not take a lot of the Marauders out, and the unit of Marauders with
that is not good.
Crater like ended up grinding, like 40 Marauders ended up grinding out a unit of 10 Blight Kings.
That is not good.
Yeah, like it was bad.
Marauders have no business doing that sort of business.
Yeah. Yep. So then, like, the was when it came back around to his turn, I had gotten 2 turns worth of points off of both of the objectives. Great. But he was in a position now where he, like, I had no bubble wrap left on my Great Unclean One. So I'm just hoping to keep everything alive as long as possible to force him into a position where he just can't he can't win. Yeah. Like, I'll end up with a small win, hopefully, because I just sat on the objectives longer. What happens is the most outrageous thing I have ever seen in a game of Warhammer. So he charged his Bloodthirster in, and I want to say it's the Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster, the one with the big axe.
Yeah, it might be.
So, and it does like mortal wounds on like, does mortal wounds on 6, like wounds of 6, instead of regular hits. and it does like D6 damage. So the crazy thing happened. He buffed that with both of his slaughter priests. So it had like +2 to hit. So it got all 3 of the attacks through. And then he rolled like all 5s and 6s to wound. So he did mortal wounds with all of the attacks. And there was some other ability that went off as well. And then he rolled the 4d6 for damage. So it was all going to be like d6 plus 3 damage. And he rolled 4 6s.
Oh, God.
Into the Great Unclean One.
The Great On There One.
Yeah. So it was 36 mortal wounds into my Great Unclean One.
If Clan Scry, I could only see him now.
Yeah. My only disappointment in this, and I was actually kind of happy that he overkilled me this badly, right? Because the Great Unclean One's ability, like his mortal wound save, when you save on a 6, it reflects back the mortal wounds. Yep. So I'm like, this is awesome. I might just be able to spike this guy back. And I leave him with like 2 wounds.
That's just awesome.
It was just awesome. At that point, it was just like we were just having fun after that. I'm like, yeah, you definitely have this game now. There's no way I can possibly win this. So one of the other cool awards that they were giving out for this tournament was each round, you just took a tally of all of the units that were wiped out during that game. And the person who had the most units die collectively in all of their games got like one of the secondary prizes. So I just said to my opponent, like after he spiked my Great Unclean One, I'm like, all right, you're definitely going to win this game. So do you want to just grind this out and try and like maximize the number of units that we kill? Like, are you cool with doing that? He's like, hell yeah, I am. So we just proceeded to like he like tried to get his units out of cohesion so that they would blow up to battle shock. And like it just went into like, it's the end of the tournament. We both know we're not going to win. I know you're winning the game. Let's just have fun, stupid shit now because it's the end of the tournament and we have time. Let's just have some fun. Let's go for the weird booby prize, which neither of us got, by the way. But
fun to try.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, well, how can I not go for this at this point? In like all of my other games, like a decent number of units got blown up. So
yeah,
I was like, maybe I'll actually have a shot at this. I don't know.
I was shocked from my little list with barely any models. Like, I mean, I was failing armor saves like crazy, but overall, I think it held up all right.
Yeah.
With tanking.
So, end of the day, we both ended up going 3-2.
Yep.
So it was definitely I felt good about what I had done. I came away with like a million notes in my head about how to play Nurgle differently and what's going on in the metagame and what to do for the next event and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I basically I met my objectives for the tournament, and I did better than I did last year. Not in the rankings, but like in like my general tournament performance was overall better than it was last year. I went 3-2 last year, but this year I had a stronger 3-2, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I need to. I mean,
then, I was kind of joking around, but, I had a little rivalry going on with our buddy Mark that I wanted to, like, if I faced him, like, I played against him at the, like, last year. So I'm like, and I lost that game. So I'm like, if we play each other, I got to get the redemption and beat you. So that was one of my objectives. If that happened to occur, or at very least, I've got to do better than Martin does. Like, that was like, just like my objectives. And like, I ended up I'm not going to crap on Martin in any way. Awesome dude, awesome army. He won best painted.
yeah, he did.
Very important to note. Personal victory of the friendly rivalry. Yeah, but oh my god, did I come away with this tournament with like, oh my god, I'm playing Nurgle completely differently from now on.
I like that. I came away thinking like I made some stupid mistakes, but I think my list is solid. If I didn't make those stupid mistakes, and if I'd played it more than 4 times before I'd shown up there.
Yeah, I mean, I also had the advantage of I've basically been playing this
nonstop
variants on the same list basically since the Nurgle book came out.
Yep.
So it was like 10 months at least of running basically the same list all the time.
Yeah, so, I went in there like, I got 2 weeks left. I better paint this army.
Yeah.
I can't believe I painted that full army in 2 weeks.
I mean, it's Stormcast, so it's not that hard to do. So what do you think you're going to do like differently in the future?
Do you mean in particular to this army or in general, like next year, like when we go, what am I going to be playing?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say starting with the army.
I think the list is cool. It's not exactly what I want to do. I feel like it's got some tricks, but I need something with more tricks up its sleeve. I need more tricks. I've been working on some Night Hunt stuff that I think might suit the bill, but I'm also looking forward to seeing what the new Moonclane book has to offer. Because from the rumors I've heard, that's going to have like tricks galore up its sleeve.
Yeah, I mean,
but the true book I'm looking forward to with all of my heart, Skaven.
Yeah,
Skaven book.
I really want a Skaven book to happen too, and I don't even play Skaven. I just want it to exist.
Yep. But yeah, I think next year I wouldn't do. I would practice my army more. I felt like I went in there with a really good working knowledge of the missions, fairly good knowledge of how other people's army works. So I didn't get really like tricked too much by what stuff does. I'd know my own army better.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing really for me was that I kept in mind the whole time, you're playing the mission. Your objective is win the mission, not kill all of your opponent's stuff.
That's the key thing I put forward in my mind every time. Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes people freak out when you retreat instead of pile in and attack.
Yep. I mean, I feel like I could just go do a whole like hour video on my thoughts on what to do with Nurgle now after this experience.
Yeah, I've got a lot of fun ideas too. That'll be a fun one to do.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say off the top is what I have experienced a lot with Blight Kings is that anything that gives them -1 to hit shuts off their exploding hits.
Yep.
And that like really dramatically decreases their power. And there's a lot of things out there that'll give you -1 to hit.
There sure are.
And so having an army that's just reliant on Blight Kings feels like a bad idea. In this particular tournament, I don't think it came up. You know, I think it happened in that game against Death, round 1.
Probably like -1 people.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he debuffed my Blight Kings. But you know, but that's definitely an issue. I think bodies on the board, I think it was in a decent place as far as bodies on the board.
I was not in a good place with that. That's the Stormcast struggle though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if I was to go and say, like, basically run the same list, but make like one change to it, and take the unit of 30 Plague Bearers and run.
Just cutting out.
What's up?
You're just cutting out.
So just to hopefully be in here this time, I would cut the Prismatic Palisade. That would give me an extra 40 points in my list, and then I would break up the unit of 30 Plague Bearers into 3 units of 10. I think that's like the first thing that I would do. What I found myself doing a lot was summoning in Plague Bearers and using them as chaff.
Yeah.
And, you know, just doing little things like, okay, I want to tie up that unit over there, so I'm going to put Plague Bearers in front of it. I'm not going to charge them, but I'm going to be exactly 3 inches from them. So they have to really like waste a lot of movement trying to get around me, or they have to charge into this chaff and maybe be chaffed up for 2 turns.
Yep.
So that's definitely a big thing. I think running like a greater quantity of units, like I think the number of models is okay, but the number of units is a big deal.
My list is cool, but I don't think I have any room to really adjust.
Yeah.
I think I'm sort of locked into what it does. It does it really well, but I can't really, there's nothing I can really cut.
Yeah. What's interesting too is that I think I would change both of the artifacts in my list.
Yeah.
like the Tome of 1,000 Poxes, I think is excessive.
Oh, I'm surprised to hear you change that out.
It just feels excessive. It doesn't come up often enough that it matters.
You'd throw in the Witherstaff, wouldn't you? I would. That's what I would do.
I will tell you exactly what I think I'm going to do. And it is probably going to be surprising. Also, the Aether Quartz Brooch is garbage. Like, it looks so much better on paper than it is in practice that there's just no way. So what I definitely want to bring back into the list is a Lord of Afflictions with a Rust Fang.
I like.
that is like one of Nurgle's most potent weapons. He's really tough, really hard to shift him off the battlefield, and like just poking at stuff and giving it -1 to save is a big deal.
Sure is.
And the other problem that I've been noticing a lot is my Great Unclean one is actually like a really big linchpin to all of the stuff in my army working properly. And once people realize that, they kill the Great Unclean one as quickly as possible.
What's the first thing I do every time?
Yeah, you kill the stupid Great Unclean one. Or the Harbinger of Decay, whichever one.
The Harbinger's got to be first. Great Unclean one second.
Yeah. So I think the Great Unclean one needs Endless Gift.
Endless Gift? I don't remember what that does.
In the Battle Shock phase, you roll a d6 for each wound that's been allocated to that model that turn, and you heal a wound for every 4-up.
Oh, that's right. That's not a bad idea at all.
Yeah, because it's really hard to kill the Great Unclean one in one round of combat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's based on wounds allocated, not wounds inflicted. So it's wounds. It's the wounds before his
saves. It's
not Disgusting Resilience. It's whatever else his special version of Disgusting Resilience is. So you could basically go and say, like, get 10 wounds thrown onto the Great Unclean one, save 3 of them with his after save, and then roll 10 dice and heal 5 wounds back. Now you're down like net. What did I say? Like, now you're down like net 2.
That's frustrating.
And then you heal D3 in your hero phase. Yeah. So, I mean, I like Blight Cyst a lot, but I feel like I don't like relying on Blight Kings that heavily.
Yeah.
So I think what the idea that I've been toying around with is actually running the Taliban of Nurgle. And at very least, like, it's reducing your drops. It's giving you another command point.
Yep.
It's making all of your stuff more durable. And it's giving you another artifact. And it has no tax in it, right? Like,
yep, everything is useful.
Yeah, like realistically, the only thing that you're actually required to run in that is 3 units of either plague bearers and or plague drones.
Yep.
That's all that's actually required by that battalion. But you can also just jam 3/4 of your army into it too.
Yep.
It makes plague bearers a little bit more durable. So I'm thinking like MSU plague bearers in the Taliban, Great Unclean one in the Taliban. I am undecided. I need to playtest plague drones versus Puscoil Light Lords.
Like them Light Lords. The Puscoils.
Yeah. I mean, I think I like that the drones feel like they're a little bit more reliable because they're not susceptible to that whole -1 to hit thing.
Right.
And
excellent point.
But there are more wounds on the table and more space on the table, more bodies on the table.
Yep.
The flip side, though, is you can run your Lord of Afflictions with the Puscoil Blight Lords and use his command ability and get them an extra 8 inches of movement on the first turn and Alpha Strike with them.
Yep.
Whereas with the drones, that would be a gamble. With the Puscoils, it's like guaranteed. And then I think I would probably keep in Gutrot Spume in a unit of 10 Blight Kings, because that's just like MVP every game. Unless something weird happens, like running into like invincible Khorne Marauders, they're the MVP every game. And they don't need the rend from the whatchamajigger, the Blight Cyst,
right.
to be good, because they're like 10 of them just throw enough damage around that it doesn't matter if they have rend or not. And then if I'm cutting Blight Cyst, it means I get to cut the Lord of Blights out.
Yeah.
And then it also potentially lets me drop the Harbinger of Decay if I'm relying more on Plague Bearers, so that's
inherently right.
That's freeing up like another 300 points in my list. So it gives there's a lot of options, a lot of flexibility. And interestingly enough, it ends up like not, I don't think, playing significantly differently than what I had already been doing. Like the same basic concept is there, right? Like you have the unit of 10 Blight Kings that's a big bully on your opponent. You have your stuff on your side of the table that's durable, that's going to hold objectives. You have another unit that is going to be a hammer that can go try and dislodge other objectives or take things out.
Yep.
Your Great Unclean One's kind of your hub that's buffing things out and doing all the magic that you need.
I see you convert one into like a lunch lady with an apron and handing out her lovely little buffs to all her children.
Yeah. I think, though, the moral of the story for me is that I really am enjoying Nurgle a lot. Yep. And this, I've played Nurgle now at 2 different GTs. And I'm like, I'm not tired of it yet. Like, the only thing that has got me is like, okay, I want to try more things with this army. What else can this army do? What have I not unlocked yet?
Yeah, I've played a few games with the Stormcast, and I'm like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, there's a reason I'm selling my Stormcast army.
I won't sell mine. We'll keep them around, but I'm good for now.
Yeah. I mean, the other big thing for me is like all of my Stormcast is like the pre-sacrosanct stuff. So it's like, yep, all of that's obsolete now.
The garbage chamber, right? Is that what they call it now? The hot garbage chamber they're all from?
Yeah. I was like toying around with some ideas in my head earlier today, and like, I think they're like with the models I have, I think there might be gas in the engine for some interesting lists, but they just don't excite me. Like they all feel like Stormcast feels like it's either a one-trick pony or it's trying to be a toolbox, but you don't have enough hands to hold all the tools that you want to use.
Yeah, there's just not enough points.
Yep.
And super not enough points. I came up with some wonderful synergies, and I just kept coming up with good stuff, and like, great, I'm over by 20 goddamn points. You know?
Yeah, I mean, like the got the Star Drake and a Lord Celestant, or not Lord Celestant, Lord Castellan. Like, that's a fantastic combo. I like it. That's 600 points in 2 models.
Yep.
Now, it's 600 points of models that are virtually invincible. Well, unless you run up against Mortal Wounds.
Yeah, but
yeah, but that's just super rough. I don't know. I feel like I need to comb through Nurgle now and be like, what's this capable of?
yeah,
What other things are out there? And I probably am going to do a video at some point of just like exploring everything that Nurgle has to offer. Because I realized, I mean, I haven't actually counted up the War Scrolls yet, but I think, you know, War Scrolls that fit into one allegiance, I think Nurgle may have the most in the game.
it might. There's a ton of stuff that fits in. I mean, it's a super, super exciting book. I agree with you on that 100%. I find myself often like, you know, got a down second opening on that book up and being like, ooh, there, you know, there's something cool. There's something you could do this, you could do that. Just exciting.
Because you have everything in the Allegiance. You have all of Slaves to Darkness. You have Clan Pestilence.
Yep.
You have Archeon.
Yep.
You have all of Beasts of Chaos if you take that battalion that can mark them all Nurgle.
Yep.
And then you have the Temercan Horde.
Yeah, now that seems like something that would be fun to do, but expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think the models out of that are cool.
Yep.
I've read through the War Scrolls and I'm not that excited.
No.
Although I feel like I need to read through them again more carefully. But even with that, I feel like they're just not that exciting. Like the one that I thought might be a thing is like the Plague Ogres, but because I'm like, you know, your regular destruction ogres they're pretty solid, right? So like if you take basically the same stats and throw it into a Nurgle allegiance with, you know, the Nurgle-y things, what does it look like? And it just didn't come up with like what I thought it would.
Yeah.
It was a little underwhelming. It was basically like I looked at that and then I looked at Blight Kings and I'm like, Blight Kings are better.
Yeah. When am I going to spend hundreds of dollars? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I see you're working on that army right now.
I've been working on it the whole time. I've fixed up my bases a little bit, and I'm just trying to quickly just dry brush some highlights onto some of the metals. Just giving it a little, trying to bring it up a little bit more.
Yep. So you're running the same list again tomorrow?
Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to hammer smash things tomorrow.
Yeah.
Nice. Maybe it'll be all death armies, and I'll be screwed.
Yeah.
Actually, I want death armies. Go ahead, bring death armies, please.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like your list is pretty good against death. Like,
yeah.
You would be okay.
Yeah, I just drop down and murder a Mortark or two and make eyes.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll face 200 Plague Monks again.
You know what? Good on you for painting 200 Plague Monks.
Yep, definitely. Painting them very well, too. The basing on them was cool.
Yeah.
Really well done army, too.
Yeah, I've gone back to starting to work on my free guild again, and it is just such a grind.
Yep.
Because it's the same sort of model count that you're looking at. And to have, you know, a variety of units, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I have 80 swordsmen.
Yep.
Like 20 halberdiers, I think. I'd need more halberdiers.
Yes, more to kill.
And like 40 handgunners and 30 great swords, and it just like you just keep going down the list and it's like, holy shit, this is a lot of models.
Yep.
But I think the key for me, I think, is I realized I cannot paint them as like batch paint or assembly line painting, or I'm going to go crazy.
Or you just do them 5 models at a time that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think it needs to be like tiny batches, like 5 models at a time. And really put like care into them to get them to the level that I want them to be at.
Yeah, because I'm just batch painting the crap out of these guys. Out of here. Done.
Yeah. And then I want to go back through all of my Nurgle too. And I mean, particularly like my Plague Bearers, a lot of those were a pretty rushed paint job. Like they were very much like, okay, base, wash, dry brush, hit the metal, hit the guts, throw a base on it, and it's done.
Yeah.
So I want to bring the quality up a little bit. Some of them I did put more love into, but a lot of them, I mean, I have like 90 of them. So
yeah, it's hard to.
Yeah, I mean, at least the Plague Bearers are like, you can get most of the way there on the model with like a really rough undercoat and a wash and some dry brushes, and that gets the model like 80% of the way there.
On the table. Yep.
Yep. So any final thoughts on the tournament? Other stuff coming up? What we're doing in the future?
Man, what are we? We have there's a tournament tomorrow at Off the Wall in Hadley, Massachusetts. Sign-ins at 11. $15 entry, includes lunch. Next week there's a tournament at the Portal in Manchester, Connecticut. That's I'm not sure what the price is on that, but that's supposed to be set up so to encourage more match play in the area. To match like ITC, it's going to be like ITC standard, I guess. I mean, that's all I can really think of that's going on in the near future. Captain Con's coming up in February. That's going to be, they're looking to make that a big GT.
That's in Warwick, Rhode Island, I think.
Warwick, Rhode Island, yep. It's a nice area. Yeah, so like future stuff that I want to do, I want to like here, I think it'd be cool if we started doing like get a couple more people involved and do like a, you know, Tale of Four Warlords or something like that, where we just start painting and talking about some our armies and how they're working and fun stuff like that. Local people, of course, because we'll be playing against them, I guess.
Yeah.
That'd be really fun to do. I'd love to like dive back into Nurgle again. I'm gonna start talking about Night Haunt. Got my eye on the Night Haunt. I'm really curious.
They seem like they have some mean tricks, and people haven't unlocked everything in that army yet.
I've found some more mean tricks. I found some mean things to do. I'm excited about it. I'm always excited when I find mean things to do.
Yep.
I guess I'm inherently mean like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what I'm really looking at with Nurgle too, is like, okay, I've done the obvious things so far.
Yep.
Right? Like in AOS 1, I was running Plague Touch Warband with all the mortal stuff and a Great Unclean One. Now I've been running Blight Cyst, which is kind of like the obvious successor to that. You know, I've seen people run Thricefold Befoulment, and it seems like it's good. I don't know if it's like the right list for me. Will I try to acquire 2 more Great Unclean Ones to run it occasionally? Probably.
Yes, you can.
You know, people are, I think there's a lot more gas in the engine for like the drone strike sort of list.
Yeah.
Anywho, I think that's going to be all for the evening. I hear an unhappy child coming my way, so I should probably get going.
Yep. Cool. Thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, man. It's been fun. I will talk to you all later.
Talk to you later.